Hello and welcome to day 20 of the Beer Jerk Advent Calendar. He's Luke.
He's Matt.
And we are drinking a local favourite from Epic today. So this is a hazy pale ale. A break for those of you who have been put off by our saisons. As we've seen in some of the reviews, they've some glowing reviews and some people who only like hoppy beers. Well, this one's for you.
Yeah.
And from one of the OGs of hoppy beers in New Zealand.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. So Epic have been around for, 16, 17 years now?
I think they just had the 17th birthday maybe. Yeah.
So they are, you probably all know Epic from Epic Pale Ale, which was one of the first hoppy pale ales in New Zealand, heavily inspired by the classic Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, hopped singly with Cascade. That kind of really made a burst onto the New Zealand brewing scene and was an introduction for a lot of new craft beer drinkers in New Zealand. I think is a real gateway kind of benchmark beer. Then Armageddon, following on from that, is iconic West Coast IPA. Hop Zombie, their classic double IPA, and they are one of the brewers that kind of really kicked off the the Pokemonization of beer in New Zealand with.
Do you think?
That kind of really regular new release hype beers. Back when it was the IBU wars and West Coast IPAs were all the rage. So it's a really kind of iconic brewery who've kind of set the stage for craft brewing in New Zealand in a lot of ways.
And they've since been overtaken with the tickers and the constant beer releases. There are definitely breweries that are releasing 100 plus beers in a year, and Epic are at the more sedate. One every 6 weeks or thereabouts, new releases?
Oh, they're generally doing about 2 a month.
Do you reckon? New releases?
They usually, we see one hazy and one West Coast beer from them every month. And then they periodically have a few more special releases dotted throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I'd say probably about 30 new beers a year.
Oh, okay.
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
But,
I guess there's a couple of brewers that just really skew things by just releasing a stupid amount of beers.
By releasing 10 beers a week, however many it is. But so this is a hazy pale ale. Now, Luke Nicholas from Epic was, as we've said, a real pioneer for the West Coast IPA scene in New Zealand, and was kind of late to the game with hazy IPAs, a little bit resistant. But,
it's interesting because as much as they were so far ahead with kicking off the IPA movement here in New Zealand, they definitely did not get behind New England IPAs and hazy beers until really very late actually. And in the early days of Epic, it was just really fantastic to see the commitment that Luke's the founder of Epic and still is the guy behind all the recipes and things. Just his commitment that every season he'd go to Washington State and do the hop selections, and just I suppose he was at the forefront of buying large amounts of really fantastic American hops before we had things like Nelson Sauvin, and just before New Zealand hops became a massive thing. It was the American hops that these beers were all about.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of the public and some of you guys out there and generally people who are shopping in the bottle shops won't really have that visibility on is hop selection is a huge deal for the quality of your hoppy beers. So the brewers that really commit to those volumes and fly out to Washington and down to Nelson to carefully choose their lots really kind of do get the best results from their hoppy beers. And the equivalent I'd draw to it is with strawberries. Sometimes you go strawberry picking and you get those delicious, beautiful strawberries that are red all the way through and so juicy.
Yep.
And then sometimes in the supermarket you get one where it's kind of green in the middle and a bit hard and not that kind of flavorful. And both of those are sold to you as strawberries, but one is a completely different transformative experience from the other. And it's like that with hop selection. So the breweries who really focus on it, like Epic, get the very best hops. They select exactly the, not just the variety that they want, but the specific field and the specific harvest date and the specific lots. So they're very careful about choosing which ones that they're going to get. They get the whole batch under contract and it's sent out. And you can tell that in the hop profiles that Epic get out of their beers. And still, after all these years, one of the best hoppy beer producers in the country. And it's a really interesting hop combination in this beer.
It is. Your strawberry analogy was wonderful, but perhaps another one might be grapes, and the way that winemakers. A Chardonnay grape is not a Chardonnay grape. It's different depending on where it's grown. And with this, which is made with Mosaic, Talus, and Centennial, a bag of Mosaic hops is not the same. And for some brewers, and especially for home brewers, they just think that, they read about the hop profile and they read about Centennial and all the flavors they're going to get in there. Then they get some hops that might be pretty old, like who knows where they're from, and they just keep them in their garage for a year or so. Then they make a pale ale at home. And they might be thinking, this doesn't really taste as like the description says on the website. But it's the quality of the plant and of the hop that grows on the plant is different from plant to plant and field to field.
And how it's stored and handled.
Yeah.
Homebrew hops, unfortunately, are generally kind of the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
The big commercial breweries who do that hop selection get the top tier. Your middle-sized breweries get the lots after that because they're under contract. They might not get lot selection, but they get the first pick after that. And then kind of your nano breweries and your home brewers are left with what's left. But then also what happens is those hops are sold in big 5 kilo bags, but homebrew shops sell them in 1 kilo bags. So those bags are purged with nitrogen usually, or CO2. I think sometimes they use argon, other inert gases, just to have this sterile, non-reactive bag of hops, which at the brewery it's cracked open and popped in there. But then the homebrew shop will open it and then repackage it into another bag, which sometimes they'll vacuum seal, sometimes they won't, sometimes they'll store cold, sometimes they'll store ambient. So you get much more variation at that level. But
and another great innovation of Epic's that really led the way for a lot of other breweries is that Epic doesn't own a brewery.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that in a moment. But Luke was working as a brewer for the
Cock and Bull.
Cock and Bull, and then they opened a contract brewing business, and there are just various contract breweries that are commercial breweries around New Zealand, and that's where Epic beers are made. So Luke creates the recipe, pulls all the ingredients together, and the beers are brewed at a third-party location, and that's the same for the majority of beers that you buy from Behemoth, from Batch, don't have a brewery. From Garage Project, the majority of their beers are contract brewed for them. So there are these
from Small Gods.
Yep. So there are these fantastic premises where experts. It's just like a commercial kitchen, I suppose, where you just go in with your recipe, and that really enabled Epic to just grow and scale and scale. And as I say, other breweries have taken inspiration from them without having the commitment of investing in stainless steel. Although they have invested in stainless steel just recently to a pretty tiny level. They've got a small brewery at their tap room in Onehunga.
It's a 300 litre kit, right?
I think thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of like just a very small kit that they just release a few kegs of, so they can tinker with recipes, and they just release them in kegs at their tap room. So that's really nice for those guys to actually be able to, because obviously they are brewers. It's just they've only just got access to their own small brewery once again.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
But back to this beer. This is a hazy pale ale, which is something that Epic have stepped up and produced a lot more of in the last year, in particular, in the last 2 years. But one of the showcase hops in this is one of my favorite new hops on the scene, which is Talus. Now, Talus is a Neo-Mexicanus hop. I think we may have talked about that in one of these videos, or it may have been elsewhere.
Or the Sabra, maybe.
Yeah, so Neo-Mexicanus is a strain of hops that grew up independently of the main lot of cultivated hops that came originally out of Germany and the UK and propagated into Nelson and the Pacific Northwest in the States. These Neo-Mexicanus hops grew wild in kind of the what's now the Mexico-USA border region, and it was only discovered and kind of cultivated and domesticated in the last 15 years or so, and we're really starting to see the fruits of those hop breeding programs coming out now with hops that we've talked about, Sabro, and Talus is kind of the other main one. There's other ones, El Dorado and Zappa, Medusa, and a few others. But it's got a really interesting and unique profile, which I really enjoy. It's kind of this slightly herbal, coconutty, soft fruit profile, which I think is really shining through in this beer.
Yeah, really exciting developments in hop breeding thanks to these brand new Neo-Mexicanos hops that, as Matt says, that they've just they've grown in isolation away from all the other hops in the world that have all come from Western European hops. So all the famous ones that you've heard of, things like Citra and Centennial and Nelson Sauvin, and they all come from the same root, which is Fuggles, essentially, a hop from Kent in the south of England. But these hops were just doing their own thing for tens of thousands of years. So there are completely new flavour profiles that are just really beginning to be explored. And some of the Neo-Mexicanos hops, like Talus, works really nicely in these New England style hazy IPAs and hazy pale ales. They don't have the sort of the bitterness, the citrusy flavours that you have in a lot of the other hops that are popular in the West Coast IPAs. And it's it's really cool to see new things happening. So yeah, good to see Epic embracing some new interesting hops in the beers.
Yeah, and it's good to see continued innovation and quality from one of New Zealand's original brewers.
Yeah.
So cheers, Epic.
And cheers to you.